So I just finished watching Superboys of Malegaon, and I gotta say, this is a heavy tearjerker. I didn't think it was going to be, but it is a tearjerker. Hello there, namaste, and this film is an amazing film. Let's read the synopsis, and it's not completely what it is. A journey of an inspiring filmmaker as he bands together his group of friends to make a film for his town, Malegaon. That in and of itself is the premise of it. That's how it starts off. A young man who's coming into his own, who basically does wedding videography and pirates, like he purchases films and then sells tickets to come and view them. That is pirating. Even though you're wanting to share, like I'm in full agreement of like watching an Indian film that I truly find impactful and trying to get other people to watch it. But it's illegal for me to charge tickets for something like that. It's better to just, try to get people to watch it. But yeah, a raid happens, they destroy the place, they take all his films, and he just decides to start making their own. And they start basically taking actual films, like big industry films, and then making them in their own small town. It's basically pirating, but at the same time, they're shooting it themselves, they're acting in it themselves, they're probably changing up the dialogue a bit, but you realize things are gonna start going south because the director of it, the issue is a lot of reasons why people don't go places. And what I thought the show was gonna be is about a group of friends who get together and make it big. I thought the whole thing was gonna be about them getting to that point where they finished their first film and they made a name for themselves. That is not what happens. This film spans, I think, technically four periods of time, because it kind of ends in a dark note. But it spans several periods of time. It starts in 1997, then it skips to 2004, I believe, then it skips to 2010. In 1997, there are a group of friends who are having fun making a film, and the director wants to do the exact same thing for the sequel film. The writer wants to actually make something of their own. He believes in doing originality, and I gotta say, I'm a firm believer of that, because there's a problem of going to cinemas and seeing the same film over and over and over and over again, because it's like, oh, this industry did this, it worked well, let's do it as well. This industry, and they beat for beat, copy for copy. Nothing wrong with that to try to make it your own, but in this situation, it's just like, the writer wanted to do originality. The writer, and I was in full agreement with him, even though he kind of flew off the handle a little more than I would have. It's just, he was right. You do have to create things your own. You can't just copy. So he leaves to go and make a name for himself. But when you're just copying films, you don't need a writer. So the director, what he does, he basically does it again. And the director basically has his own tragic tale where he falls in love with a woman, but she basically gets married off to someone else because, again, arranged relationships, which I'll never agree with. Sure, there are those people who will never find someone unless it's arranged for them, but it was sad because the girl had no right to speak for herself, and he couldn't do anything about it. And he even went to her wedding to do videography. It just, how sad is that? But the director, he basically finished copying 2 films, and that's all they really did, and he took the credit for everything. All his friends and everything were basically thrown to the wayside. They weren't allowed to accept any credit. They weren't allowed to do anything. And it's really sad because the director truly believes like he did everything. But in the end, there would have been no first film, there would have been no second film if it wasn't for his group of friends. But he refused to acknowledge them. So due to that, the rest of the group leaves, except for one guy. And this one guy, I realized, was the main focus of the story. They keep showing him. It's not his story, but in the end, it is his story. They keep showing him. He's a loom worker. He's kind of the scrawny, skinny one. He's the runt of the group of friends. He sees his group of friends as the only light in his life. He, in the first film, wanted to be the lead character, but wasn't allowed to be because he doesn't got the look of a lead role. He was just basically a grip. He did whatever was needed. He ended up falling in love with the actress they hired, who was of course getting beaten by her own husband, and he ends up deciding to stick with the director as everyone else takes off because he's got nowhere else to go. He's a loom worker. He has his friend, the director, who basically offered him his only opportunity. He's gonna go nowhere else. And then in one of his films that he decided to make an original film, His pride got in his way. He did not want his friend on screen, even though his friend was the only one there. He got his friend to act in I guess, the lead role. What did he do? Every time his friend had a line where his face would have been shown, they put the screen behind him so his friend wouldn't pop in screen. And his friend walked out, the runty one, the little one, he walked out. The woman who was getting beaten, she walked out following him, and the next thing you know, the theater is half empty. Why? Because the film wasn't enjoyable. The director got so prideful, he felt he could do no wrong, only to see everything crumble down around him. They couldn't make enough money to keep the theater open. It gets turned into a freaking restaurant. But I realized this story had to do more with the friend, the small one, the scrawny one, mainly because he kept having these lines about how like when he was holding the woman who was acting, who was the battered woman, holding her child, I assume, he was talking to him and like, look at this magical bird, looking at the plane, and the baby calmed down and kind of reached for it. He kept focusing on flying, this whole aspect of flying, and I absolutely loved how it ended because of that, because they spent a lot of time focusing on that. Every time there would be a plane, you would focus on it, and it's like, yeah, that's gonna serve a purpose. Yeah, that's gonna serve a purpose. But the friends basically all break apart, and you hurt because the director, the one who he saw as his best friend, who had helped him and aided him throughout his life, didn't want him in his picture. He just had him there to stand in the place. Didn't bother showing his face. Then in 2010, the friend is back working at the loom, starts coughing up blood. Immediately, I knew he had cancer. And this is the part where the film really gets to you, because I could spoil this film. I can say everything that happens, but you know what? That's not going to change. This film is definitely worth a watch. I'm just going to say that right now. It's definitely worth a watch because it still is impactful. It's the dynamic between the friends. It's the folly of pride. There's so many morals in this thing. Because if this group of friends never got too prideful, thinking they were too great, that they didn't need the others, imagine where they would be now. Imagine if the writer was still in the group. Imagine if all the top actors and everyone were still close together. What kind of films, what kind of things could they be making in that small town? It would no longer be a small town. It would be a massive industry. That's what it takes. But it was the pride, the folly of pridefulness. It's amazing how you can view that and see, like, this had so much potential. The vision, the dream, it just would have been so amazing if they could have just gotten past their pride. The writer wanting to be always listened to, which he did bow his head a few times. The director always thinking that he knew what was best. It's just, actually, it was primarily the writer and the director that had the biggest issues. Everyone else was just going along. They didn't have an issue until 2004 when they were being told that they weren't important to anything. The director did everything. But in 2010, turns out that the guy has cancer. And it's like, it's terminal. There's no recovering from it. And the director basically brings everyone back together to make the film Superman. And they're gonna cast the friend as the lead role. And it has this powerful ending because he's always talked about flying. And then he sees himself on screen. With the green screen, because when they're recording it, he's looking and just like, why the heck are we doing all these shots? Why? Because there's a green screen behind him. And he's like, it's ridiculous. How does it work? You just remove the green screen and you put it in. And it got to me, because it's like the one thing he wanted, everyone got to see him do it. He wanted to be a lead role. He knew he could do it, even though his body wasn't the best for like the lead role, the hero character. He had the potential. And then he also wished to fly, and here he flew on the big screen for everyone to see. And it's just, oh, it hit so hard. And I was like, this is, because I remember watching the trailer and I'm like, this is based off a real film. And then at the very end, because I forgot it. I was like, no, there's no way this is a real film. There's no way this is a real film. And at the very end, the very end, they show the real footage, not real footage, but real pictures from everything. And it's not bad. It's like tough to watch because you realize the writer died in 2020 at the age of 45. One of the actors is still producing. It's like the ones who wanted to make it somewhere went nowhere. The ones who were lower in the status of the friends group were the ones who made it far. And that's the thing I got out of it, because when you get to the end of the film and realize that they had so much potential, because the director could see a scene in a movie and could easily emulate it, but he didn't have the talent, I guess, for himself. He needed someone over his shoulder to guide him. He had no talent for writing, but his friend could write. But the problem was, the writer had no personality with dealing with people, that he lost all his opportunities. He needed a friend that could basically tell him, no, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to say, can we change this dialogue here, here, here? Because the one thing I feel this film knew how to capture was the tense feeling of doing something, especially with a group of friends, because when they first make their first film, their first parody, they all leave the screening. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't like that, because there's nothing wrong with the screening going poorly. I mean, heck, the first 2 times Star Wars was screened to private audiences, it was disliked because there was no music, there was no real sound effects or anything. They were using still the fake lightsabers, they didn't add the special effects on it. When you remove a lot of what makes something amazing out of it, it makes no sense. So in my mind, I was like, even if it goes poorly, you guys can still keep going. Because I believe that all it takes is the dedication to it, and not falling fully to pride. Because when you fall fully to pride, when you fall to that, it destroys everything around you. Because if you just imagine if those groups of friends stayed together and helped balance each other out with their personality, which they did before they started thinking themselves better, they would have gotten somewhere. I absolutely recommend this film. There is so much in this film. I gotta be honest, there's probably a ton I missed. I barely understand Hindi, so I was able to catch a few things. There were no subtitles, so I had to basically go off what I saw and what I can understand from Hindi. But in the end, you know a film is amazing and the actors do a great job when you can tell what's being said without having to hear every single word. When you can see the actions on the screen, you can mute it and understand it. That is how great this film is. It still hits hard, even when I'm not reading every piece of dialogue that is being spoken. Even when I don't understand every piece of dialogue that's being said, I got so impacted by it. This is an amazing film. Even if you don't speak the language, you can still visually see and understand what's going on. I absolutely recommend this film. I absolutely recommend this film to everybody. Thank y'all for watching. Talk to you next time. Toodles.
You guys got a video? Why is it so bad?
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Why is it like that?